This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. At the moment, Yunxiao was suffering in the secret chamber. Two streams of energy were constantly colliding in his dantian, trying to devour each other. All his meridians and bones had turned golden, resisting the impact. If he didn't have the tyrant body tempering technique, he would have exploded and died on the first attempt. However, his imperishable golden body was severely damaged. After withstanding several attacks, it began to show signs of collapsing. Yunxiao was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly flipped his right hand, and moon pearls of the East Sea flew out one by one and lined up in front of him, emitting a bright light as if the moonlight was sprinkling down. There were a total of 24 beads, precisely the arrangement of the 24 moonlit bridges. His hand seals began to change, and every move was extremely slow. The power of the pearl seemed to be drawn and changed with the hand seals. All of a sudden, the 24 moon pearls from the East Ocean shone even brighter. They flew above his head and formed a circle, as if a bright moon was shining down from the sky. A strange phenomenon appeared in the moonlight. There was the sound of the sea, and the waves were sparkling. The night sky in the sea unfolded. The tears of mermaids could be vaguely seen inside, which turned into pearls. A long bridge stretched across the sky like a rainbow, faintly visible under the moonlight. Yunxiao opened his eyes in horror, and his lunar pupils appeared as he looked at the strange phenomenon. Everything in front of him was like a dream, but it gave him a sense of reality. What's going on? Turning the void into reality? Yunxiao's mind was filled with question marks as he looked at the abnormality of the 24 beads, feeling a little confused. Boom, boom, boom. There was another burst of intense pain in his dantian. The two spiritual energies squeezed each other, creating countless thunderous rumbles and constantly attacking his body. Pfft. He coughed up another mouthful of blood. Having no time to think about the strange phenomenon, Yunxiao pointed two fingers into the air. The strange phenomenon displayed by the 24 moonlit bridges slowly descended and turned into rays of moonlight. Under his one chi of creation, they were all absorbed into his body. A surge of power poured into his meridians, and his entire body swelled up with a bang. Ha! Yunxiao's eyes flickered with ruthlessness. After being transformed by the Great One mystic chi, his body could directly convert all kinds of forces. The power of the 24 moonlit bridges was directly turned into a surge of vital chi, which rushed into his dantian. Like the rivers flowing into the sea, 10,000 streams converged into one, trying to suppress the two spiritual energies. Boom. As the moonlight power sprinkled down, the two spiritual energies suddenly changed and began to merge. However, this fusion process was accompanied by a large amount of energy. It was like a fusion that released a terrifying impact that blasted in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. Pfft. Yunxiao coughed up another mouthful of blood, and his face was filled with horror. The three forces in his dantian began to merge into one, releasing thousands of torrents out of his control, constantly hitting his body. Bang. 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 At this moment, the meridians, apertures, and apertures in his body began to collapse. Golden light kept exploding from inside, like sword chi. Yunxiao's face was filled with misery. The result was completely beyond his expectations. If this went on, he would be completely buried. Li Yunxiao, use my power to suppress it. The demon dragon let out a roar and burst out with all his might. If Yunxiao died, he would be finished as well. His crumbling body began to transform into a dragon, and dragon scales appeared one after another. However, it was still unable to stop the speed of his body's collapse. Almost all 36 major acupoints on his body collapsed, and Yunxiao laughed miserably. I was too careless. I didn't expect the path of martial arts to end in such an absurd way. He could no longer summon any strength to resist the chaos coming from his dantian. Under the fusion of the three forces, it was like a spinning nebula, forming a galaxy of its own, constantly destroying his body. Don't be discouraged. No, the demonic dragon roared. I've been on the verge of death so many times, but I've still survived. Don't you understand? Yunxiao shook his head weakly. Don't you? In the past, it was always an external invasion, and I could resist it with all my might. This time, my dantian is out of control, and I have lost the source of my fundamental power, so how can I resist? It's all my fault for being too careless. I didn't consider the possibility of the two powers repelling each other. He was unusually calm at the moment. As a person who had lived 2 lives, he was not that afraid of death and could face it calmly. All of a sudden, a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. As the star cloud in his dantian circulated, a bridge slowly appeared and crossed his body, faintly discernible. This is a divine body phenomenon. What's going on? The bridge in his body was vague, as if it was in the distant starry sky, but when he lowered his head, it was only in front of his eyes. At the start, when his bright moon divine body started to show signs of abnormality, he had already felt that it was strange. However, he didn't have time to think about it. Now that his physical body was continuously being destroyed, he calmed down and started to observe carefully. Since it's a bridge, it should be able to connect people. While pondering, Yunxiao raised his foot and stepped onto the bridge. Stomp. As soon as he stepped on it, he felt the world change. An unimaginably powerful force gathered from all directions and poured into his head. Boom. He felt as if his head had exploded in an instant. A purple light shot out from between his brows, penetrating the secret chamber and shooting into the boundless sky outside the island. Even someone as tough and strong as Yunxiao could not help but open his mouth and roar, and his entire face was completely deformed in pain. Boom, boom, boom. The primeval force was like a storm, and it lasted for a while before it slowly subsided. Yunxiao gritted his teeth so hard that blood gushed out of them, and his body trembled violently, but the light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter. A force was constantly growing between his brows, spreading to his limbs and bones, repairing his damaged body wherever it passed. So the mystery of the god body is like this. Yunxiao seemed to have understood something, and a look of joy appeared in his eyes. Then, he slowly calmed down and performed an incantation gesture with one hand, then sat down cross-legged again. Under the power that gushed out from his glabella, his body, which was on the verge of death, began to gradually recover. At this moment, in an unremarkable courtyard on Xiankong Island, the first island master suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise and looked up into the void, where the purple light was shooting up from between Yunxiao's eyebrows. He seemed to have sensed something. First Island Master, what's wrong? Zhao Wenjian asked carefully from outside the jade screen. He had just told the First Island Master that Yunxiao had the supreme-grade profound artifact, the Cauldron of Mountain and River, but the First Island Master did not respond at all. After a moment of silence, he let out a soft gasp. The First Island Master fell silent again and then said, I didn't think that there would be someone on this island who has activated the power of 8 gates. This is getting more and more interesting. Wenjian, go and find out who it is. The power of 8 gates? Zhao Wenjian revealed a puzzled expression. He clearly did not understand. The First Island Master said slowly, the so-called power of 8 gates is the 8 ultimate apertures of the 10,000 spirit fleshly body. Once they are opened, they will possess unimaginable power. Their fists can shatter the sky, and their feet can collapse the earth. Those so-called divine bodies were actually born with the power of the 8 gates, and they were derived into different attributes. The ultimate state of the physical body is to open all 8 gates and sanctify one's body directly, breaking through the realm power and peeking into the immortal state. Zhao Wenjian jumped in shock and said in horror, peeking into the god realm? You can reach the end of martial arts just by training your body? The First Island Master couldn't help but laugh. The one who's known as the most powerful martial sovereign among you humans, isn't his body sanctified? He can break through the realm power with one punch and is infinitely close to the immortal state. That person just now should have completely opened one of the gates. If this person doesn't have a divine body, then he must have an extremely powerful body refining divine art. His strength is not to be underestimated. Zhao Wenjuan's face was filled with shock as he muttered to himself, I didn't expect the 10,000 spirit body to contain such a powerful force. Then, in our pursuit of martial arts and constantly cultivating our meridians and dantian, aren't we taking an unorthodox path? Who would have known that the body itself was a huge treasure? The first island master laughed, all techniques return to one, different paths lead to the same destination. Even if you cultivated the art of sorcery, you would still eventually reach the realm of the 10-sided completion. Although the physical body was a treasure, opening it was much more difficult than cultivating the meridians in the dantian. In ancient times, most of the races used to train their bodies. Later on, this kind of body technique gradually disappeared in the long river of history. It could be seen that it had great drawbacks. Humans have always avoided the important and chosen the easy path. I see. Zhao Wenjuan said, as long as the person who opened one of the 8 gates is on the island, we will definitely be able to find him. I wonder why the first island master is looking for him. Behind the jade screen, the head in the shadow raised his head slightly. The corners of his mouth were slightly open, and saliva drooped down. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip. He smiled and said, You don't need to know about this. Just find him and bring him here. Although Zhao Wenjuan was dissatisfied, he did not dare to ask too much. After so many years, he had gotten used to the temperament of this great island master. He could only ask again, First Island Lord, that Li Yunxiao has a supreme-grade mystic artifact. Will there be any problems? The first island master muttered to himself for a while before saying, the appearance of a supreme-grade profound-level weapon is indeed shocking. It's completely beyond our expectations. But don't worry, the excess energy this time is too much. Even if we remove that supreme-grade profound-level weapon, it's enough. Zhao Wenjuan was shocked, it actually exceeded by so much. I'm really looking forward to the dazzling treasure meet. I wonder what kind of treasures the experts from all over the world have brought over. He thought for a moment and asked, First Island Master. Jian's current injuries are quite bad. I'm here, the First Island Master said. I'm recovering. You don't have to worry. Just focus on your own business. Yes. Hearing that his disciple was fine, Zhao Wenjuan also heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately left the small room and went to carry out the order. Behind the jade screen, the First Island Master sucked in a mouthful of saliva and kept licking his lips with his tongue. The expression on his face became more and more excited, and a loud laugh echoed in the room. A supreme-grade profound artifact, a 9th-tier alchemist, the first dragon's bloodline, and the Sea Emperor's daughter. It seems that this is indeed a heaven-sent opportunity for the eastern mountain of Guangyuan to rise again. In the secret chamber on Xiankong Island, after Yunxiao opened one of the 8 gates, a surging power kept repairing his body, and the injury was soon suppressed. The 3 forces in his dantian that had merged into one gradually quieted down. It was as if the Milky Way was quietly flowing in his body, filled with endless power. The so-called 8 gates were the opening, rest, life, death, shock, injury, stop, and view gates. These 8 gates were also called the gates of God's arrival. It meant that when the 8 gates were opened, one would step into the gate of the God realm. It was only then that Yunxiao realized that the cultivation technique of the tyrant body tempering technique he had obtained could only open the 7 chakra seas in his body and stimulate the power of his body. The part that he failed to obtain was to activate the power of the 8 gates that was hidden in the deepest part. He didn't know if the tyrant body tempering technique had a second part, but he didn't need it at the moment. The moonlight power of the bright moon divine body was derived from the 8 gates. The moment he stepped on the bridge, he instantly understood. The power of the 24 moonlit bridges is to open a bridge on the other shore in your body, which leads to the path to sainthood by opening 8 gates. At this moment, his first opened gate had already been opened, and his physical body had already undergone a qualitative change. Even if he did not use his origin energy, he had enough strength to fight against an ordinary martial sovereign. This is the kind of power that Ao Chongkong has. Yunxiao clenched his fist and twisted the space, making it look like a nebula was spinning on his fist. Soon after, rays of light began to appear on his golden body. The power of laws slowly flowed around his body. When he broke through the 8 gates just now, he broke through the 2 stars martial sovereign realm and stepped into the 3 stars realm. Breakthroughs in martial arts were no longer of much interest to him. His comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth had already reached the end level of martial arts. As long as he continued to accumulate origin power, he would be able to continue to break through. Yunxiao checked the power in his dantian. After the 2 streams of spiritual power and the divine body's power of phenomenon fused, they had become one. He formed a hand seal, and the energy immediately circulated around his body before returning to his dantian. I can't believe I accidentally found a way to increase my spiritual energy. Yunxiao's eyes gleamed as he said in delight, if I can find a purple snow coral that has absorbed a large amount of the spiritual power, then I can make this power infinite? What? Haven't you caused enough trouble? The demonic dragon was startled. He cursed and shouted, just now, who was the one who was dejected like a dead dog, lying here and waiting for death? You've just escaped from death, and now you want to court death again? Yunxiao narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, it's just that it's easy to produce it once, but it's easy to mature it again. I already have a general idea of the situation. As long as we control our intake, there won't be too much of a problem. He licked his lips as if he was extremely happy with the increase in his spiritual energy. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. The restriction he had set up in the secret room was broken by a force. Boom. The seal-breaking power fell from the sky, directly shattering the secret room and the restrictions he had set up, and fell on his head. A cold gleam flickered in Yunxiao's eyes as an electric arc emerged from his body. In a flash, he cast the thunder escape art and moved 100 meters away with one step. Boom. The entire secret room was smashed into pieces. The control of the power was extremely exquisite. It just blew open the secret room and did not affect any of the buildings nearby. Yunxiao looked up coldly at the sky. Not far away, 2 figures emerged indistinctly and spoke in different voices. I didn't expect someone to be able to peek into the secrets of the 8 gates. Do you have an innate divine body or have you cultivated a body-tempering divine technique? Arg. Young Master Yunxiao? Were you the one who opened the light of the 8 gates? 2 figures appeared in front of Yunxiao. The one who was surprised was Zhao Wenjuan, while the other one had his arms crossed over his chest. He was silver all over, had 2 horns on his head, and his face was cold. Wenjuan, do you know this person? The man frowned. The shock in Zhao Wenjuan's eyes grew stronger and stronger, and his body even began to tremble. He found that he could not see through Yunxiao more and more, and he found more and more terrifying about the young man. He had a 9th-tier alchemy skill, a cultivation base of a martial emperor of the 9 heavens realm, a supreme-grade mystic artifact, and now he had opened the 8 gates of his divine body, as well as the age of less than 20. Heavens! Am I dreaming? Zhao Wenjuan shook his head desperately. No matter what, he would not dare to combine these achievements together. What kind of terrifying existence would this be? Wenjuan, what's wrong? The marine race expert seemed to have noticed that something was wrong with Zhao Wenjuan and asked with a frown. Zhao Wenjuan's face turned pale. He steadied his mind and said, I'm fine. I know this person. Don't do anything, I'll talk to him. The Sea Tribe member nodded and said, it's best if we don't have to resort to violence. After all, our Xiankong Island is a very friendly place. It was only then that Zhao Wenjuan turned to Yunxiao, and with an extremely complicated look on his face, he said, I didn't expect that the one who opened the 8 gates of the divine body would be young Master Yunxiao. I can't help but think of a saying, in the Yangtze River, the new generation will replace the old. Humph. Yunxiao snorted coldly and said, when did Mr. Wenjuan become so sentimental? If I hadn't fled so quickly, I would have died at the hands of this sea beast. I haven't even sighed yet. When the marine race expert heard him call himself a sea beast, his face immediately sank, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Zhao Wenjuan hurriedly stopped the marine race expert, afraid that the two would have a conflict. He quickly explained, this is the 4th island lord of our Xiankong Island, Lord 9 Heavens. Yunxiao's face turned cold as he said, oh? I've learned the rules of the Xiankong Island. It states that no one can kill people at will, and as the island master, you can kill people at will. What a powerful rule. Zhao Wenjuan's face turned embarrassed and he hurriedly said, "There's been a misunderstanding. The two of us are here under the orders of the first island master to find the person who opened the 8 gates of the divine body. We didn't expect it to be you, young Master Yunxiao. I also felt the restriction in the secret chamber just now. If it weren't for Master Jiutian's help, I wouldn't have been able to summon young Master Yunxiao in time. If I didn't escape just now," Yunxiao said coldly, "I would have died in vain, wouldn't I?" Humph. Nine Heavens snorted and said disdainfully, "If you can't even take my attack, then the so-called 8 gates of the divine body is nothing more than that. You'll just be a dead dog even if you die." A cold gleam flashed in Yunxiao's eyes, and his face grew colder. He laughed out of anger and said, "Good. Just because of what you said, if I don't beat you to death today, I'll write the name Li Yunxiao backward." Arrogant. Nine Heavens' face sank, and a domineering force exploded from his body. Just the strength of the aura was enough to push Zhao Wenjuan away from his side. A violent aura kept surging out of his body, and he was obviously stimulated by Yunxiao's words. As the 4th island master of the Xiankong Island, he was furious that someone had come to him and said that he would be beaten to death. "You dare to use the name Nine Heavens?" Yunxiao snorted. "It's enough to show that you don't know how high the sky is." Zhao Wenjuan's face was full of worry, but Nine Heavens' temper had always been irascible. Once it flared up, no one could stop it. He was somewhat regretting bringing him along. "Humph, ignorant child. You don't understand my name." With a mocking and cruel look on his face, Nine Heavens rushed in front of Yunxiao and threw a punch at his face as he grinned hideously. "I'd like to see how strong a human who has opened the 8 gates of the divine body is. Can he defeat the strong bodies of the sea race?" Bang. Yunxiao's hand glowed with a golden light as he raised his hand and clenched the fist. The entire space trembled. "What?" Nine Heavens' expression changed slightly as he sneered. "You really have some skills. But you really dare to fight me with your physical body? It's enough to show your ignorance." His face turned cold, and a sharp force condensed on his fist. He shouted, "Nine Heavens' wind-ripping fist." The sound of metal being cut rang out from Yunxiao's palm as energy slashes burst out from the fist force. The essence chi slashes pushed Yunxiao's palm half an inch away, but they only left a few bloody wounds. "What?" Nine Heavens' eyes bulged out as his heart trembled. His wind-tearing fist could tear apart the body of any member of the Sea tribe, but it only cut open some skin. Yunxiao frowned and said in a cold voice, "It's my turn to cut you." A stream of cold air gushed out from his palm, and the ice sword appeared in a miniature form, slashing out in the air. Their fists and palms were less than half an inch apart. The sword chi instantly arrived, and the sword light was unstoppable. Bang. Jiutian's fist force was directly broken by this sword. A sharp pain came from his hand, and he cried out in shock and retreated. He saw that one of his fists had actually been cut off, and his arm had become bare. "Ah!" Nine Heavens and Zhao Wenjuan both exclaimed in shock. Zhao Wenjuan's eyes were even more serious. He could also tell at a glance that the sword was not an ordinary item. To be able to possess so many powerful profound armaments at such a young age, in addition to those realms that were completely impossible to reach at this age, just how terrifying was this young man's background? Woo-woo, damn it, damn it. No. Nine Heavens roared madly. He raised his arm and shouted a few times. A new hand grew out immediately, but his forehead was covered in cold sweat. "You can't leave the Xiankong Island alive." He grabbed at the air, and a ray of light gathered in his hand, turning into a long spear. A terrifying force emanated from the tip of the spear as it thrust toward Yunxiao. "Ignorant." Yunxiao sneered. "You're so ignorant." His figure suddenly became faint and turned into lightning. The spear pierced through his body. "What?" Nine Heavens was taken aback. When he saw the state of Yunxiao's thunderbolt, he immediately realized that something was wrong, and his face changed. With your insignificant strength, you're probably only a 7 stars martial emperor among the humans. You're not worth mentioning. A cold gleam flickered in Yunxiao's eyes as he raised his hand and spread his fingers before Zhou Tian's face, then cried out, 5 lightning strikes.